Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Perdue, and I am a nerd. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry, but Mary Jo is yawning over there. We all know why. She's just gotten back from 2 weeks of exciting honeymoon. Her name is no longer Mary Jo Blum. It is now Mary Jo Boyd, which will bring me later to the exciting contest we have planned for all of our attendees. But we're going to try and wake her up. Leanne has got a stick. She's going to poke her, see if we can get her to wake up. Oh, after that exciting honeymoon that she's just come back from, so that we can have the October virtual user group meeting that we affectionately call the water cooler. She pressed a button over there. I thought she was going to chime in and make fun of me, but I'm having too much fun making fun of her. Today our topics are the transaction file list, or as we like to call it around here, the TFL. It is a kind of a catch-all report that can provide all sorts of useful information on all sorts of different things: fees, costs, payments, trust transactions, all sorts of things. Mary Jo's going to talk about that, and I am going to talk. now they're both ganging up and making fun of me, and I am going to talk about eNotes, which is a feature of PracticeMaster that comes with their Platinum edition. So it is in the higher level product, but it is very, very powerful, very useful, really can help to streamline some things as far as workflow goes. So we're going to talk about that. Now, I mentioned the contest. We've got this list going here of all the different things that we have to change Mary Jo's name on. And the list keeps growing and growing and growing. So we are going to have a contest. We want you to point out to us by emailing me at paul.perdue, like the school, not the chicken, P-U-R-D-U-E, paul.perdue at Attorney Computer Systems, and tell me someplace that you have found Mary Jo Blum as opposed to Mary Jo Boyd. And then we're going to draw the entrance names out of a hat and give away something exciting. We just don't know what it is yet. So if you find Mary Jo Blum anywhere, you let me know, and you may just win something that's so exciting that it's not possible at this time to describe it. Now, I'm going to click down here, and I'm going to make it show me the handy-dandy control panel for GoToWebinar. And with that, I'm going to explain to you that you have a box that looks a little like this, probably over on the right-hand side of your screen. And if it is covering up our screens and you're wanting to see what's underneath, you can click this button right here that looks kind of like a couple arrows pointing to the right, and that will move this big box out of the way. And the only thing that will be left showing is this little control panel with the buttons in it. In this little control panel, then, this button with the arrows pointing to the right will turn into a button with arrows pointing to the left, and that means, you guessed it, clicking it again will cause this to slide back out. Why would you want to cause this to slide back out? Because you're shy and you want to type a question right here. If you have a question and you don't want to talk, all you have to do is slide this control panel out if it's not already exposed and type your question right here. Our lovely moderator, Leanne, will interrupt what we're talking about so that your question can be asked and answered. If you are not feeling shy, you can instead point to this button that looks like a hand with an arrow pointing upwards in front of it, which means, you guessed it, that we're going to raise our hand, and when we see that your hand is raised, we will unmute you and call on you, and you can ask your question, and then we will let you make sure you got it answered by asking you to clarify that yes, indeed, you have had your question answered, or to ask additional questions. And when that's all done, we'll meet you again so that you can continue eating your lunch at your desk because you are a diligent, dedicated worker. And with that said, I am going to get rid of this and turn things over to Mary Jo, who is going to talk about the transaction file list.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for the congratulations. And Paul's just being very silly here, but hopefully we do get my name changed and all these things. It is quite an endeavor here to do all that. Who knew? But anyway, I'm going to talk about the transaction file list. A lot of times I get requests for reports. Maybe somebody has deleted their verification list and they want to know a way that they can get that information back. I can give it to you in a transaction file list in a little different way, but you'll still get that information. Other times I have maybe it's a productivity report that they want to see just the hours worked and the hours to bill and that amount. They don't want a whole lot of other things in there, just a quick down and dirty report that gives them that. I can do that with the transaction file list. So I'm going to kind of show you just a couple different things, where the information can be pulled from, how to set some of those parameters a little differently to get some different results with this. And I think you'll find out some new things maybe that you didn't know, and I hope it's helpful for you. So we're going to go into our reports and go into the transaction reports. Got our transaction file list over here. One thing I do want to talk about just real briefly, and this is on almost all of our reports, is this very first screen. Most people know that you can go ahead and put a client ID in, either a range of clients, or if you hit the multiple button, you can go in and put specific clients that you want to run this report for if they're not in a specific order. And they also might know that you can do a name search through a name search and primary timekeepers or categories. But a lot of times I have questions. Clients don't realize that there is this box down here on all of our reports. And you can sort this report even more specifically by billing frequency. You can come in here and have your different billing frequencies. Maybe you have monthly and contingent. You only want to run this report for those certain types of cases. Location, if you have more than one location, you can also sort by that. Status is a big one, and something that's new in version 16 is now we also have the statement delivery option. So if you want to run this report and just see the ones for clients that have mailed statements versus email, you can come in here and you can run this very specifically for one of those options. We also have active and inactive. If you do progress billing, billable or non-billable, you just want the billable clients, not the non-billable. Task-based, if you're using task-based billing. Whether or not they're released to bill or bill on demand, all of those things you can specify on these screens here. And then also, I also have clients that want to do it by the date it was opened or closed. And again, you can come in here and do specific dates of when that case was opened or when it was closed. Or even the cases that don't have a close date. So you just want to have it all the active cases with no close date in there. So those are some options there on all of our reports. This screen right here is where you can do that. And something else on the side here on all of our reports, if you get a certain parameter that you set up and you run that report with those same parameters every time, you can load that, you can save that particular template that you create, and then you can load that, and then it will, or make it the default so it's always the one that comes up. And then you have that in there so you don't have to come in and select that every single time. So those are some shortcuts that some people don't know about. If you do, it's a review, but if not, that's something that you can play with and narrow down your criteria. The transaction screen looks a lot like your generate statement screen. This is where you can really narrow down whether you want to run it by a specific fee timekeeper, the date range, if you want to do a certain transaction code or category. I can take off if I want to just do just for fees. I can uncheck those boxes and run a report that's just going to show me fees. Something that I do when I want to look at my time, I have certain transaction codes that I code for my vacation. And if I want to see how much vacation I've used, I'll just run the report from January till today with that certain transaction code for the fees, and I'll just get a report back that will tell me all of the days that I've used with that particular code. You can do that with expenses or advances. If you wanted to find out how many court costs, what the total amount of all the court costs for a certain client was for a certain date range, I could come in here and do that and use that transaction code for court costs or filing fees or whatever you have there. So again, you can narrow this down and get very specific on what you're seeing. The fee timekeeper is different than the primary timekeeper. If you're out on this first screen and you're choosing the primary timekeeper for this client, it's not going to be the timekeeper that necessarily worked the time. It's going to be whoever's showing as primary timekeeper. So be careful of that. If you want to know who the timekeepers are that actually worked, you want to do this fee timekeeper. So maybe I want to see timekeeper number 1 through 1 and all the time that they have put in on this case, regardless of who's primary. Same thing with cost, because you can do that for a cost as well. Maybe you just want to see all the payments for a certain date range. This is where you can come in and do that. I can uncheck these, and I can just run the report for payments only for a certain date range. This is a little different than the cash receipts report that would also show you all of the receipts that came in for a certain payment date. because then I can also come in and I can have a little bit more options over here to run this report. So just a couple of things here that you can check or uncheck. On the Options tab, a whole bunch of information here. I'm going to just start on the one side and work my way across. We can run this in detail or summary. The summary is going to give you just a real simple column layout. The detail is going to get into more client information, things like that. So you can play with that and go back and forth on which way you like to see the report. The source is where it's going to actually pull the information from. Billing would be from tabs. Remote, if you're using tabs through remote, would just show you just the remote information. If you've done a data import, it would show you just the information that you've imported. PracticeMaster, if you want to see just the fees that were entered through PracticeMaster. So for those of you that are using tabs and maybe your billing department uses tabs for the time entry, but all the attorneys use PracticeMaster, and you want to kind of break that down and see what time was entered through PracticeMaster, you could do that by unchecking everything and just showing just the PracticeMaster time that was entered. You can also see the accounts payable information, any transactions that have come through that. Maybe you billed a cost through accounts payable and you want to see all of those. Or you had a payment or an entry that came through the trust account, and you just want to see just those trust payments that came over. You can have everything else unchecked and just pull from trust. If you integrate with QuickBooks, that's also an option there as well. The work in process or archived is going to show you what fees are outstanding and have not been billed yet, or ones that you have already sent a statement on. So depending on whether you want to see either or both, you can check those. There's some information here that you can include. Do you want to print the timekeeper's initials, the name, the work description? The GLS information can be helpful, especially if you get one of those error reports that, when you're updating a statement or something and it tells you that GLS entries may or may not have been made. You can come in and run the transaction file list and check the GLS information. And if GLS information shows up, you'll know that the GLS entries had been made. If it doesn't, then you'll know you have to go into General Ledger and you have to go ahead and enter those journal entries manually. So that's important. Criteria page, if you just want to remember all the things that you checked, that's going to spit out that page at the end that's going to tell you everything that you chose for these screens. And you can export this into different formats if you want. Right now we've got it as none. It's just going to print the report, but you can send it out as different types of documents to Excel. The billing status, if you just want to see all of the billable time, you can just uncheck the non-billable or vice versa. Maybe you just want to see all the non-billable time or both. You can have the print status. This is back when you're doing your fees or your costs, whether you've put it on hold, print, or save. And then you've got your date selection. It defaults to the transaction. So whatever the transaction date is over here that you've put in would be the actual fee transaction date or the expense transaction date. So if you needed to see all the fees that were out there for March 1st through March 31st, you could put that in there. Or you might want to see all of the time that was on a statement that was dated between March 31st and March 31st. So March 1st, I don't even know what I just said there. March 1st, March 31st, whatever. I'm back in March. I don't know why. But anyway, then this date here would reflect that range for the statement. So if a statement was prepared between that time frame, you would see all of the time regardless of what the fee transaction date was. It would show you everything that was billed in that time frame. So depending on whether you're doing it by statement date or transaction date, we'll limit that information as well. The format screen gives you a lot of different columns here that you can check. And a lot of times people will just gloss over this and go run the report when in fact you can check some certain boxes here and take off boxes that you don't need. Maybe you don't care what the status is or what the transaction code was or the rate or the units. You just want to see the client ID and the date, the timekeeper, and then what was actually billed. You might not want the reference number on there. Some certain things here you can change. And again, once you get that set how you want, you can save that template so you don't have to come in here and check these boxes every time. This is a place you can show the check number. So a lot of times people say, where can I see a report that shows me the check number? The transaction file list will do that. So this is something you can look at here and see what you have available. On the sort, we've got a lot of different sort options here. A lot of times you can sort it by the client, and maybe you want to, this very first sort, you can have it sort each one on a new page. So if you're running this by client, it would put each client on a new page and subtotal each client. You might want to do this by timekeeper and have, all the timekeepers, and this would go by primary timekeeper, and have that start each new timekeeper on a new page. And then by transaction date, you've got 3 different sort options here. But you also might want to do this by user. This is where I was talking about sometimes your verification list gets deleted and you want to find out which user entered time for certain attorneys. You could come in here and you could sort this by user ID and then transaction date and then get all the users and all the time they entered for each attorney. You might want this by timekeeper and then down here have user. So that each primary timekeeper is on there and what user entered time for them, and then the transaction date down here. Again, this is things that you can play with and see how you want to have it sorted. But it will give you a lot of different results depending on what you do here. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the none, just do a timekeeper, and I want to show you some of the different things that we can do here. First off, I'm going to just say that I want to see just the trust payments. I want to see all the payments that came through from trust, whether they're archived or not, work in process. And I'm going to go in here and show, I guess I don't care about that. Let's get in here for the timekeeper. Of course, I can't do that for payments only. Let's do it by client. There we go. I'm sorry, I don't know what I've chosen over here. Here we go, trust. And transaction date, billable, non-billable, and we will do AP. All right. Okay, fees. Oh, I have fees. That's what I'm doing. I'm sorry. I knew I had something. There we are. And now I just want to have trust. I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and I want to see all the payments that have come through from trust. And so this is one that will show me that report, and I have one payment that came through for a client that is from trust. This is a payment that we had entered in earlier, and it posted to tabs. I can also show all of the different information here from all of the areas, and now maybe I just want to see hours worked, hours to bill, the amount, and the description. And that I would do for the fees, expenses, and advances. I'm just going to leave it open for all the dates, but you could limit that for whatever you wanted. I want to see everything that has been put in, and I'm going to just do a summary report. And we'll go through and show you this is just a quicker report here that will show me just who the client is and then what the hours worked, hours to bill, and the amount was. And I can order this by primary timekeeper again or user so that you can get a quick report about how many hours were worked versus how many were to bill. That's another popular report that a lot of people want to run. So, do I have any questions or no questions? Try it out, see what you think. If you have any questions, let us know. We'd be glad to help you with that. But a lot of times, like I said, that will give you a little more detail than the productivity reports or the cash receipts might. So, I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Okay. Well, that woke me up. I don't know about you, Leanne, but that's a lot of information that you can get from one report. Now I am going to talk about eNotes in PracticeMaster Platinum. eNotes is a feature, people think of it kind of like instant messaging, only it's tied to PracticeMaster. And you'll see how that becomes significant in just a second. Now, the most simple use for eNotes that usually pops to people's minds right away is, I want to tell Phyllis that I'm ready to go to lunch, or I want to tell Chuck that he's got Mr. Smith on the phone even though he's on the phone with a different client. Email isn't really a good way to do that because email isn't in your face, it isn't intrusive, it isn't something that's going to pop right up in the screen. So it's good for that, but it's good for so many other things. Email also tends to be bad for a long back and forth interoffice communication. You know, I ask Bob something about a certain set of interrogatories, and he emails me or responds back, and I respond back, and we have a conversation that goes on and on and on and on and on. And email can really get kind of cumbersome as a means of communicating that sort of thing, whereas eNotes can go back and forth and really not clutter up a mailbox, really not get lost in a mailbox. one of the neatest features of eNotes, however, is something called eNotify, which means along with the eNote that you're sending, you can send the record that you're asking about, the calendar item, the note, the email, the client record. Anything that's a record in PracticeMaster can be attached to an eNote. So let's take a look at it first. I'm going to have Mary Jo send me an eNote, just one that says that Mr. Smith is on the phone. And I think she may be over at Leanne's machine, so it may come through as being from Cottrell, however. And while we're waiting for that to come in, I'm going to point to this button down here. This is, oh, there we go. Paul is a nerd. Okay. So here we have an eNote from Leanne, apparently, even though it looks like Mary Jo sitting in her chair. It says Paul is a nerd. And I'm going to say is not. Now, this is just an example of the highly productive use of eNotes that you can make in your firm. Now, I have made that reply, I have noted this, and I now can dismiss it, and it goes out of my pane of view, if you will, for eNotes. Now, I'm going to get this down here, and I'm going to go ahead and go back. And Mary Jo, did you send that to you or to me? Okay, so I'm talking and telling all these people what they just saw, but they didn't see it. You need to send it to you because you're the one who is logged into the seminar. So we're laughing about the fact that Paul is a nerd, and these people are wondering what the heck we're talking about. So we're going to let that come through again. And now we're going to, while we're waiting for that this time, we're going to point down here. There we go. Paul is still a nerd. Here we have a new eNote that's come in from Leanne saying Paul is still a nerd. I can click on this icon here, displaying my eNote, and I can reply and say, is not. There we go. Now you guys are in on the joke, and we're sending these eNotes to the right machine. Now, I can dismiss this eNote, and it goes out of my pane of view. And now we have more eNotes that are Mary Jo's, so I'm going to get rid of those. And I'm going to show you this. Now, right-clicking on this icon down here lets me choose whether or not I view myself as being online, away, or do not disturb. These are my three statuses. I can get help about eNotes. I can change my preferences. I can create a new eNote. I can read eNotes, and I can open the eNote list. Now, if I want to send a new eNote, all I have to do is right-click down here and choose New eNote. And then it wants to know who I'm sending it to. And, of course, it'll pop up and fill in that box for me. And then I hit send, and I've just sent an eNote to Leanne. Now, my preferences will allow me to decide whether I have a balloon for eNotes or a pop-up for eNotes. I prefer a pop-up. So I'm going to ask Mary Jo to reply to that. I'm sitting in as Leanne to reply to that eNote that I just sent her with it set to pop-ups. And we'll show you how that comes through. Now, while we're waiting for that, we'll pop up these preferences again. We can also set whether or not we want to disable eNotes on startup. Some people don't like them. Some people don't want to use them. Whether they are always on top, meaning that they would always stay on top no matter what else was there. Whether we want to minimize the tray to the tray when the last eNote is dismissed. You saw me dismiss that eNote that said Paul is a nerd. And there was another eNote underneath that Mary Jo had left over from this morning. Okay, now here's that other eNote that Mary Jo has just replied to. She says, I am a nerd. And instead of coming up as a bubble down here, it came up right on top of whatever I was doing. Now, this is great for asking Bob if he's ready to go to lunch or telling Chuck that he's got somebody else on the phone. Chuck can reply and say, we'll pretend that this was saying that Mr. Smith was on the phone. 1 more minute, please hold. And so this would go back to the receptionist who would then say to Mr. Smith, who's on the phone, I understand that he'll be 1 more minute, can you hold? It's a great way to get into to Bob, the attorney's desk, and right in the middle of what he's doing, ask him if he wants to speak to Mr. Smith without him having to interrupt his call to Mr. Smith, without me having to break in on his call, without me having to go into his office. Okay. Now, that's great, and it has its purposes, but here's where eNotes really shine. Let's say that I am in a certain record, a certain client, and I'm looking at a certain note that somebody took today. And in that note, oh, I'm in tabs. Going to PracticeMaster, into Client, and look up a note. And in that note, there's a question that's coming up. I don't understand something that the person who's taken the note has said. I don't know why. Let's go to ACS as a client. I don't know why that view is what's being held. I don't know why the client said that, and I want to ask more about this. But in order to do that, I may want to include that entire note when I eNote somebody. So I'm going to go over here to the journal, and I'm going to take this note, and I'm going to eNotify. That means I'm going to click this button right here. It's like the eNote button, but it's a little bit different. It's got a record behind it, a little piece of paper behind it, and it's called eNotify. And when I click that, it's going to create an eNote that has the journal record attached. And I can send this to Cottrell, and I can say, I see the client said blue. Didn't he say green before? And we'll try to spell it right. And then when I send this, Leanne is going to get something that includes the entire note here. Now I'm going to ask Mary Jo from Leanne's desk to send me an eNotify that includes a client record or a note or a calendar record, anything. And we'll be able to see what that looks like from the other side. So it's a very effective tool for saying, here's his calendar record. It's for a deposition next Tuesday. I'm going to send an eNote to Stephanie and ask her, didn't this get postponed? And when I do that, I'm going to be able to send the calendar record along with the eNote so that Stephanie can then just open up the eNote, open up the calendar record, see what it is I'm talking about, and then reply to me. If I did this without eNotify, Stephanie would have to go into PracticeMaster, look up the particular client, look up the calendar record, find out what I'm talking about, and then say, yes, that did get postponed. Instead, I just get something that looks like this. I click on the linked record down here. It opens up that linked record, and I say, oh, yes, I now can answer that question, because when I do that, when I click on that link, I'm able to see what it is that she's talking about. Okay? Now, there's one more. Leanne, there's a question?
Yes, there's a question. The question is,
Are you muted?
I just unmuted Kathy.
Are you muted?
I didn't.
No, I think I'm okay now. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, Kathy. What's up?
Hi. I was wondering, is this available on tabs as well to be able to go into the client notes and attach that as well?
No, it is not. It is a PracticeMaster feature. Now, by that I mean if you have a fee that you're going to ask a question about, or you have the client themselves that you're going to ask a question about, you can attach that record because that record is available in PracticeMaster. However, things like client notes from tabs or the actual client configuration screens from tabs, those cannot be attached to eNotes, only things that are in PracticeMaster.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, Leanne? Okay. Now, another thing that's huge about eNotes is the ability to build them into workflows. And by that I mean workflows is another new feature. It's not specific to Platinum. It is available in PracticeMaster Premier as a whole without being the Platinum version. But eNotes from the Platinum version make that workflow feature much more able to communicate with whoever it needs to be communicated with. Let's say, for example, that I want to know when somebody takes a note on one of my cases that does not is not made by me. So I can develop a workflow in PracticeMaster that allows me to get notification when a journal record is created on a case where I am the primary timekeeper, and yet that note is created by somebody other than me. So I'm going to ask Mary Jo to create an eNote, I'm sorry, to create a journal record or to modify a journal record, or you can also delete a journal record. You're going to have to do this from Leanne's machine. This is the one I'm controlling. And by doing that, we've written a workflow that says anytime a record is entered into the journal or changed in the journal or deleted from the journal, and the person who's doing the record is not the same as the primary timekeeper, we want to send an eNote to the primary timekeeper letting them know what happened. And by doing that, in doing that, what we're doing is we're attaching that journal record to the eNote. So Mary Jo is over there right now creating a note for, probably Scooby-Doo or Attorney Computer Systems. And as soon as she hits save, it's going to pop up an eNote to me saying this record for one of your cases was added or changed or deleted, and then I'll be able to click on the link and see exactly what note was taken or changed for that case which I'm primary timekeeper for. Okay, now, of course, there's a little bit of thought that goes into this workflow. It has to know that Paul Perdue is the primary timekeeper for the case. It has to know that the person that took or changed or deleted the eNote was not Paul Perdue. But that's what it says here. This note was added, changed, or deleted to your case. It gives kind of a description, but then I can also click on the link and see exactly what the note contains. Now, that's huge. We use them here so that when Mary Jo and I assign tickets to each other to do certain things for you guys, when I've assigned a ticket to Mary Jo, I don't have to constantly ask her, did you do that? Did you call Kathy about that? Or did you call Bill and make sure that answer his question about this? As soon as Mary Jo finishes that ticket, that task, she makes a note about it, marks it as complete, and it sends me an eNote to let me know what's going on, attaching that task item to the eNote so that I can just click on it and see exactly what the whole ticket is about. Okay, so that's eNotes in a nutshell. They are a quick, easy way to communicate between two people within an office through PracticeMaster, either attaching or not attaching PracticeMaster records, and they're extremely powerful when they're built into workflows. Now, there's one thing about eNotes that I forgot to mention, and that is my ability to simply click here and say do not disturb. Now, what that means is I don't want those eNotes coming in that tell me that somebody created a note for one of my cases, or something happened over here, or Mary Jo completed a ticket. But I do want the receptionist to be able to eNote me and let me know that Mr. Smith is on the phone. So, Mary Jo, if you can go over there one more time and send me an eNote that says that Mr. Smith is on the phone. I'm marked as do not disturb, so Mary Jo's going to send me an eNote that if you look here at how these are structured, she is going to check this urgent box when she sends it to me. Now, any other eNote would not get through to me, but because this one's checked urgent, it's going to break through that barrier, and it's going to still pop up on my screen even though any other eNote that got sent without urgent checked would not pop up on my screen. So we'll wait patiently. I don't know any lawyer jokes that you don't know, so we'll just be quiet for a minute. And here it comes. Did you check urgent? Can you send it to Paul Perdue? Or did you send it to Mary Jo Blum? We're a little confused here on who's who. I'm pretending I'm Mary Jo, and Mary Jo's pretending she's Leanne, and I'm pretending I'm not Paul. So she's going to send me another eNote, only this time she is going to address it to There it is. Okay. Actually, she did, and I'm on the wrong desktop. See, I'm making fun of Mary Jo for being confused, and I'm confused. Mr. Smith is on the phone. It's urgent. It's got urgent here. It's got urgent down here. And in spite of the fact that I'm do not disturbed, and you know what? When I was talking about that, I was pointing to my eNotes, not this one. Because in spite of the fact that I was do not disturb, even though I wasn't, we'll pretend I was, that would break through the veil. That would come through and get up to my desktop and inform me of the fact that Mr. Smith's on the phone or that Mr. Jones is in the lobby or whatever else it is that I need to be interrupted for. Any more questions, Leanne? Okay. Well,
I'm just going to add, Paul, that you can also monitor these eNotes and sort through those eNotes. Did you show them the list? How you can get into your eNotes and manage these. You can delete them. You can keep these in a list format so that you can see that. I'll let you go ahead and.
that's exactly right. I kind of glossed over this eNote list that's right here. This takes you to a list within PracticeMaster of all your eNotes. Now, these are Mary Jo's. And lets you scan through them. You can delete them so that they don't pop up anymore. You can look at just your eNotes that are unread. You can just look at the eNotes that were received by you. You can look at all your eNotes. You can look for specific users' eNotes by clicking here and typing in a username. So you have this place, just like you have an outbox or a sent items or an inbox or deleted items, you have this same sort of an eNote list here in PracticeMaster that gives you the history of all your eNotes. And so you can sort through them, see which eNotes relate to which things, which people, whatever the case may be, and be able to look at them that way. They aren't just something that pop up and then get dismissed and go away. They are backed up by this eNote list that you can look at when you are wanting to go back and find something from a week ago or a couple weeks ago. No more questions, Leanne?
No more questions.
Okay, that's it. That's it for the October 2011 virtual user group meeting that we affectionately call the water cooler. We will reconvene in about a month at the end of November. And I think, gosh, Mary Jo, it'll be time for the end of year annual water cooler where we talk about all the different year-end topics that we generally go over at the end of the year. So everybody have a good November. Button up. Hopefully if you're not in Pennsylvania, you're still warm. And we will see you again in a month. Thanks much. Bye-bye.